Welcome to another night of education news updates. Here we go. So you don't get to exclude certain religions if you want to use public money for private education. A federal judge has ordered Texas to extend their school voucher application deadline because Muslim families in Islamic schools sued, saying they were being excluded from Texas's Education Freedom Accounts program. Not very free at all. It's a $1 billion voucher program, and it already has over 200,000 applicants, even though it can only serve like 90,000 students. But several Muslim families and schools said, "What the heck? We're not even allowed to participate? That is not universal." The state's comptroller actually had asked whether schools connected to the Council on American Islamic Relations could be excluded. And Governor Greg Abbott has previously labeled that organization a terrorist organization, which obviously they strongly dispute and are suing over. So this lawsuit argues that the state is effectively using that same logic to block these Islamic schools from a public program. A judge agreed that there are serious concerns here, and they issued a temporary restraining order extending the deadline to March 31st and told Texas, you need to fix this and make sure all types of schools are able to actually apply for your universal freedom account program. And we see this in other states. You know, voucher programs are sold as universal school choice, but when you actually look at how they're implemented, access to these programs is not equal. There is a hearing scheduled in April to decide what happens next, so this is very much ongoing. And we've seen this administration banned colleges from using race in admissions because DEI, and now they are requesting more data about race and sex to make sure that colleges are not using race in their admissions. And remember, this comes after the Supreme Court ended affirmative action in 2023. And now 17 Democratic-led states have sued to stop the Department of Education from adding new questions to a survey that schools have to fill out every year if they take federal money. And a federal judge has temporarily blocked this requirement before schools had to complete said survey. Of course, a temporary block is just a block until this case plays out. So they're arguing a few things in this lawsuit. The Department of Education doesn't actually have the authority to just willy-nilly add requirements to the survey. Also, the rollout was so rushed that schools didn't even have time to pull accurate data. And they're saying this is about politics, not policy, which, duh. I know the plaintiffs know that. This kind of data collection could expose sensitive information about students and even make it possible to identify individual students, because it's that specific. And if the federal government decides a school looks like it's still considering race in their admissions based on this data that they're trying to force them to submit, they could investigate schools or pull their federal funding or go after their programs that they think are tied to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we know they are really, really bad at nailing down whatever the they think that means. So right now the requirement is paused, but I will keep you posted. The most breakingest news of the day is that federal student loans are being moved out of the Department of Education, and 40 million borrowers and $1.7 trillion in student debt is being moved to the Treasury Department. Well, that's what the Trump administration says that they're doing. But of course, as usual, there are just concepts of a plan right now, and this will probably face challenges and legal issues. But the plan is to start with people who are already behind on payments or in default. That's about 9 million borrowers. They plan to have Treasury take over collecting those loans first. Then they want to expand this to basically everybody else, even if you're paying on time. And eventually, they would like Treasury to take over things like FAFSA. So that's just the entire financial aid system. You should go to studentaid.gov or check your loan servicer to just see if your status has any updates. And the Treasury does handle collections, but it does not currently run a 40 million borrower student loan program. So this is a massive shift, and there are no systems in place to manage this, of course. These people running the Department of Education have just proven they are incredibly bad at their jobs. They are going to be building the plane while flying it here, so I'm kind of banking on this going to Even the administration is admitting that the Treasury cannot legally take over everything on its own. Congress is going to have to approve parts of this, and moves like this have already faced legal challenges. So anyways, don't try to get your questions about your student loans answered with me, a person on the internet, or in the comment section. Just reach out to your loan servicer and get details specific to you. Actually, Linda McMahon released a video about this today, so let's watch it together.
Did you know that as Secretary of Education, I have oversight of the nation's 5th largest bank? Yes, that's right. The student loan portfolio currently sits at nearly $1.7 trillion. To put that into perspective, that's larger than our nation's cumulative credit card debt and twice the size of all American university endowments combined. Clearly, something is not right. The Department of Education was never intended to serve as one of our nation's largest banks, and because of the department's continued mismanagement, we have failed to help students gain the skills necessary to succeed in the workforce. Now is the time for a hard reset. That's why the Department of Education and Department of the Treasury today announced a historic partnership to better align federal student aid programs with those they are intended to serve. As we streamline the delivery of these programs, Treasury will assume operational responsibility for collecting on defaulted student loan debt and provide support to help return borrowers to repayment. Borrowers, students, and families should know there is no impact to you at this time. Borrowers should continue to make payments through their servicer. Students and families will continue to have access to the FAFSA form at the consistent and historic pace the Trump administration has delivered. By leveraging Treasury's world-renowned financial expertise, we are confident that American students, borrowers, and taxpayers will finally see a reliable return on investment.
Okay, listen, managing federal student loans is one of the core responsibilities of the Department of Education. Under the Higher Education Act of 1965, federal student loans were created. The second the Department of Education was created in 1979, they assumed responsibility for federal student loans. Under the Student Loan Reform Act of 1993, that was when direct loans were created. Before they were through private lenders mostly, but still guaranteed by the government, but it was a whole other thing. And by 2010, it basically became all the Department of Education's job. And just to be very clear, this is required by federal law. The Department of Education has to issue the loans, manage repayment, contract servicers, and oversee forgiveness programs. There is a dedicated office for this in the Department of Education. So wouldn't you think if you are going to be eliminating bureaucracy and making things more streamlined, you would just leave it in the department that is specialized to do this exact work? You don't think it's going to cost money and time to train people? These people are so stupid. This is one of the department's biggest, most established things. So for her to act like, oh, we were never meant to do this, that's false. Anyways, speaking of student loans, a new government watchdog report found that the Department of Education, unsurprisingly, basically stopped doing some of its most important oversight of student loan companies last year. They stopped monitoring calls between servicers and borrowers and checking borrower data for accuracy. So just, basic accountability and oversight stuff. And it was a mess before. So imagine when they stopped paying attention to what was going on. I mean, there was wrong payment amounts, payments not being counted towards forgiveness, people being pushed into the wrong repayment plans, credit damage, people thinking they're closer to forgiveness than they actually are. I mean, I have heard all of this from family members, from people on the internet. I don't even look at mine. Mine's on the save plan, so I'm which I'll tell you about more in a second. The Department of Education has been dealing with major staffing cuts under the Trump administration to the point where now there literally are not enough people to do the oversight. And they are actively making massive changes to the student loan system right now, like we just discussed. And at the same time, they are lessening protections for borrowers. The basic oversight is a protection. So my suggestion to you is just to screenshot everything, document everything yourself, check your account regularly. If something looks hinky, call your servicer right away. File a complaint if you need. You can do that through the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or federal student aid. And God, I hope somebody's paying attention to that. I don't know. May the odds be ever in your favor. I'm so sorry that we have to go through this. Unfortunately, House Republicans have been very busy lately. They have advanced 7 bills out of committee. They are going to a full House vote next. Let's take a look at them. The Science of Reading bill ties federal literacy funding to approaches aligned with the science of reading, and it specifically excludes 3 cueing methods, which if you know, you know. I'm not going to get into it right now, but there is strong research supporting this. I'm not knocking it. Phonics instruction is so important, and I like science of reading. Okay, some of you guys get a little bit scary when I talk about ELA curriculum opinions, because there's big feelings here. But the federal government cannot control what is taught in schools or how it's taught. And allegedly, the Department of Education, particularly the Republican kind, is really passionate about this. Because when we were replacing No Child Left Behind, they were like, hey, you bitches, we're not going to replace No Child Left Behind unless you promise that you're not going to tell us what to teach in the states. And now the Republicans really, really want to do that. Parental rights for me and not for ye, or whatever the fuck can be. But even if this passes, I really don't think this is going to work out for them. Next, the Stop the Sexualization of Children bill. It has nothing to do with explicit materials, of course. It prohibits federal education funds from being used for materials that they consider as sexually oriented, which is just restricting LGBTQI plus inclusive content in schools. The definition in the bill explicitly includes content related to gender dysphoria and transgender identity. So this more is the same stuff we've been seeing for years. This is, again, not about protecting children. They just use a really inflammatory name. There are also 3 separate bills all focused on student aid fraud. One creates a federal system to flag potentially fraudulent FAFSA applications. Another increases oversight of colleges that distribute aid to flagged students. And a third allows the Department of Education to verify social security numbers and citizenship status using federal data. And yeah, okay, fraud, a real issue. Absolutely. But the policy response here is increased verification and data sharing, which is just like surveillance. So yikes, for 1,000 reasons, including immigration bullshit going on in the country. This is the Truman Scholarship Clean House Bill to dissolve the current board of the Truman Scholarship Foundation. That is a taxpayer-funded scholarship for college students who want to become future public leaders. They would like to replace the board, of course, with a new one that has specific rules around political affiliation and balance. The stated goal is to reduce political bias. In practice, we have seen them take that to mean, I want you to tolerate my intolerance, please. And this one focuses on retirement plans and worker protections. It makes it harder to challenge employers over how retirement plans are managed. Right now, again, these bills have gotten out of committee. Most bills die in committee, so they are getting a full House vote. They haven't passed yet, and I don't see them on the schedule. But if they pass the House, they will go to the Senate. So they're not a done deal, but I'm just letting you know, because sometimes we look at what is being proposed. We can kind of get an idea of where things are going and what will be pushed. So that's all for tonight's education news and policy updates. Like, share, subscribe, hit that freaking bell, and the internet will just magically tell you when I'm on here yapping. And I'll see you, God willing, tomorrow if I get my together. So fingers crossed. Love you. Good night.